Excuse me, sir, but I think you're in the wrong place. The voice was young and slick, with the fake confidence of a college kid. It cut through the low hum of the Oak Barrel Diner, a place with worn plastic booths and the comforting smell of coffee and fried onions. The old man's name was William Green. He was 84 years old. He didn't look up right away. He took a slow, careful sip from his thick ceramic mug. The warmth was a familiar comfort in his rough hands. He sat alone in a booth meant for 4 people, a peaceful island of calm. The young man, a college kid with messy hair on purpose and a brand-name sweatshirt, cleared his throat louder this time. "Hello, sir. This is our table." Finally, William raised his head. His eyes, the color of a faded sky, were clear and steady. He wore a deep blue VFW jacket. The fabric was soft with age. On the front pocket, a row of tiny medals glinted softly under the lights. A matching blue hat sat perfectly on his silver hair. He looked at the boy, then at the 3 friends smirking behind him. "Is your name on it?" William asked. His voice was low and rough like gravel. The boy's smirk got tighter. "Funny. No, but we come here every Tuesday. Everyone knows this is our spot. Now, are you going to move or do we have a problem?" The boy's friend, a tall, skinny kid named Kevin, leaned in. "Yeah, Pops. Time to move along. The early bird special ended hours ago." The third person, a girl named Jessica, with a phone already in her hand, pointed it at William. "This is classic," she said loudly to her friends. "Some old guy thinks he can just sit anywhere. It's an entitlement thing." William Green said nothing. He simply placed his mug back on the saucer with a soft clink. His gaze didn't move. He had faced down attacking armies in the frozen hell of North Korea. A few entitled children with cheap insults were less than a passing breeze. But the unfairness of it, the casual cruelty, began to build in the air. The quiet dignity of the old soldier was like a mirror, and the students didn't like what they saw reflected. So they decided they would have to break it. The fight, once started, grew like a stain. The leader, who had told the manager his name was Brad, felt the eyes of the diner on him and thought they were admiring him. He went harder. "Look, old man," Brad said, putting his hands on the table and leaning into William's face. "I don't know if you're confused or just stubborn, but this booth is for paying customers who are going to order more than a single cup of coffee over 2 hours." William's eyes flickered to the half-full pot the waitress had left on his table. "She said I could have the pot," he stated simply. "I'm a paying customer." "That's not the point," Kevin said, his voice cracking with nervous energy. "The point is, you're taking up valuable space. This is a business. We're regulars. We support this place." Jessica, still filming, zoomed in on William's face. "Are you a veteran?" she asked. Her tone dripped with fake curiosity. "Is that what the little costume is all about?" "My grandpa was in the Army. He doesn't walk around in a costume trying to get free coffee." The word costume hung in the air, ugly and sharp. A few other people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A middle-aged couple in the next booth pointedly turned their backs, trying to focus on their menus. The waitress, a young woman named Brenda, stood near the kitchen door, wringing her hands, clearly unsure how to help. Brad saw the manager, a young man named Mr. Henderson who looked barely older than the students, come out from the back office. "Hey, manager," Brad called out, waving him over. "We've got a problem here." Mr. Henderson hurried over, his tie slightly crooked, sweat on his forehead. He was a man who hated fights, and his diner was now the stage for a really bad one. "What seems to be the problem, folks?" he asked. His eyes moved between the bossy students and the stone-faced old man. "The problem," Brad said, pointing dramatically at William, "is this guy. He's been here forever. He's making my friends uncomfortable, and he refuses to give up our table. He was staring at me." "He was staring at me," Jessica added, lowering her phone for a moment to look doe-eyed and like a victim. It was creepy. The accusation was a lie, a casual and mean made-up story designed to get what they wanted. And it worked. Mr. Henderson's professional, if weak, resolve crumbled. He turned to William, his expression pleading. "Sir," he began, his voice soft and apologetic, "I'm so sorry, but these fine young people are regular customers. Would you mind terribly if I moved you to one of the counter seats?" William looked at the manager, then at the smug faces of the students. He had not survived the Chosin Reservoir, had not carried his wounded sergeant 2 miles through waist-deep snow, to be shuffled around a diner by a boy who hadn't learned to properly tie his shoes. "I'm quite comfortable here," William said. His voice was quiet but firm. "I'll be leaving shortly. There's no need for all of this." This quiet refusal was seen as an act of war. "Unbelievable," Brad exclaimed, throwing his hands up. "The nerve! Henderson, are you going to do something or not? We'll take our business elsewhere. I'll make sure to mention your veteran harassment policy on Yelp." The threat of a bad online review was the final blow for the struggling manager. His face hardened with desperate borrowed authority. "Sir," he said, his voice now sterner, "I'm the manager of this place. I'm asking you to leave this booth. You can move to the counter, or you can leave." The diner had grown quiet. The clinking of forks and the low murmur of conversation had faded away. Everyone was watching. William felt the weight of their eyes, the sting of a public embarrassment he hadn't earned. He slowly reached into his jacket's inner pocket and pulled out a worn leather wallet, preparing to pay for his coffee and end the ordeal. As Jessica raised her phone again to capture the moment of his defeat, she zoomed in on the row of medals. "Seriously, what are those for?" she sneered. "Perfect attendance?" She pointed a manicured finger at the one in the center, a silver five-pointed star. "What about that one? Did you win it at the state fair for Best Pig?" As her words hit him, the sounds of the diner seemed to bend and fade for William. The glint of the fluorescent light off the silver star on his chest suddenly became the blinding white flash of a bomb exploding in the snow. The smell of stale coffee was replaced by the sharp metallic scent of gunpowder and frozen earth. He wasn't in the Oak Barrel Diner anymore. He was on a lonely, windswept hill in Korea, the screams of men echoing in his ears. He could feel the ghost weight of a young Marine, a boy from Ohio named Miller, slung over his shoulder. The boy was bleeding. His breath came in ragged, shallow gasps. The star wasn't a piece of metal. It was the weight of that boy's life, the memory of a promise made in the heart of a storm of bullets. The memory lasted only a second, but it stiffened his spine. He would not be shamed. He would not be broken. Not here. Not by these children. Across the diner, tucked away in a corner booth, a man named Mike Davis had been watching the entire scene with a slow-burning rage. Mike was a 45-year-old sales executive dressed in a sharp suit, but for 20 years he had worn a different uniform. He had been a master sergeant in the United States Marine Corps, and he recognized the look in the old man's eyes. It was a look of deep patience, the kind you only learn when you've survived things most people couldn't even imagine. When Mr. Henderson delivered his final order, demanding that William leave, Mike knew he had seen enough. This was no longer a simple matter of rude kids and a weak manager. It was a disgrace. He quietly pulled his phone from his jacket pocket, keeping it below the level of the table. He didn't dial 911. He scrolled through his contacts to a name few civilians would have, Sergeant Major Stone. The phone was answered on the first ring. "Stone!" The voice was pure gravel and authority. "Sergeant Major, it's Mike Davis," Mike said. His own voice was low and urgent, the years of military training snapping back into place. "Davis, good to hear from you. What's wrong?" "I'm at the Oak Barrel Diner off Route 9, Mike said, his eyes fixed on the scene. William was now slowly, painfully pushing himself out of the booth. "There's a situation here. An elderly gentleman, VFW jacket, hat. He's got a collection of medals you could see from space." There was a pause on the other end. "Describe him." "80s, silver hair, steady as a rock even with these punks screaming in his face." "Sir, I think it's him. I think it's Green. William Green." The silence on the line was now heavy, total. Then Stone's voice returned, stripped of all pleasantries, cold and hard, as Stone. "Are you certain, Davis?" "The silver star is center on his rack, sir. It's Gunny Green. I'm sure of it. And they're throwing him out. A bunch of college kids and the manager. They're making him leave right now." "Stay there, Master Sergeant," Stone commanded. The use of Mike's old rank was not a suggestion. It was an order. "Do not get involved. Do not let him leave the property if you can help it. I'm handling this. We're 5 minutes out." The line went dead. Mike Davis slipped his phone back into his pocket. He took a deep breath. The cavalry was coming. The call ended in a neat, perfectly organized office at the Marine Corps recruiting station 2 miles away. Sergeant Major James Stone, a man whose physical presence seemed to bend the very air around him, stood up so fast his heavy oak chair shot backward and slammed against the wall. His face, a roadmap of discipline and hard-won experience, was a thundercloud of disbelief and fury. A young corporal sitting at a nearby desk looked up, startled. "Everything all right, Sergeant Major?" "Corporal, get the CO on the line now." Stone's voice wasn't a shout. It was a low-frequency blast that rattled the pens in their holder. "And get a vehicle detail ready. 2 vehicles, 6 men, dress blues. They have 90 seconds to be in the parking lot. Go!" The corporal, trained to react, not to question, was already dialing. As the phone rang, Stone walked to the window, his jaw clenched. The CO's voice, sharp and professional, crackled through the speakerphone. "What is it, Stone?" "Sir, we have a code broken arrow situation," Stone said, using an old unofficial term for a legend in distress. "Not a real one, sir. A personal one. It's Gunny Green. William Green." The silence from the CO was deep. Every Marine knew the name. They knew the stories. William Ironheart Green was not just a veteran. He was a monument. "My God," the CO breathed. "Where is he?" "At the Oak Barrel Diner on Route 9, sir, being harassed by civilians. They're trying to throw him out as we speak." "What do you need, James?" "With all due respect, sir," Stone said, his voice ringing with total conviction, "this is not a request. This is a matter of honor for our institution. I'm taking 6 of our best men to escort a hero. We're rolling now." "Understood, Sergeant Major." The CO's voice was galvanized. "Get our man." Back in the diner, the final act of embarrassment was playing out. William had managed to get to his feet. His old bones protested the movement. The shame of the situation had settled on his shoulders, making him seem smaller, more fragile. He carefully placed a $5 bill on the table, more than enough to cover his coffee. His movements were slow, careful, a last stand of dignity against the jeering crowd of young people. Brad, puffed up with his victory, wasn't happy to simply let him leave. He needed a final public show of power. He stepped directly into William's path, blocking his exit from the booth. "See?" Brad said with a triumphant sneer. "Told you this wasn't the place for you. Maybe try the VA hospital cafeteria next time, Grandpa. They probably have Jell-O." Jessica, her phone back up and recording, giggled. "This is going to be my most viewed story ever," she whispered to Kevin, who was nodding like a bobblehead. "Shop Boomer gets owned." William looked at the boy blocking his way. This child who had never known a day of real hardship, who thought cruelty was strength. He didn't say a word. He simply prepared to step around him. It was at that exact moment that a low, powerful rumble began to vibrate through the diner's floor. It started as a deep hum, a bass note that grew steadily louder until the spoons on the tables began to rattle in their saucers. Every head in the diner, including Brad's, turned toward the large front windows. 2 gleaming black SUVs, the kind used by government officials and important people, had pulled up directly in front of the diner. Their engines purred with disciplined power. They weren't police cars, but they gave off an authority that was far more scary. They blocked the entire street, causing other cars to slow and stop. Then in perfect, chilling unison, the doors of both vehicles opened. 6 men emerged. They were not men. They were visions of military perfection. 6 United States Marines, ramrod straight, dressed in the immaculate glory of their dress blue uniforms, the deep blue of their jackets, the crisp white of their belts and hats, the blood-red stripe on their pants. It was a sight of such breathtaking discipline, it seemed to silence the world. The sun glinted off the polished brass of their buttons and the mirror-like shine of their shoes. They moved without a word, forming a perfect 2x3 formation on the sidewalk. Their faces were blank and hard as stone. Leading them, stepping out of the front passenger seat, was Sergeant Major Stone. The bell above the diner door jingled, a ridiculously cheerful sound in the suddenly tense atmosphere. Sergeant Major Stone entered. His 6 Marines followed in perfect step. Their heels clicked on the floor with the precise rhythm of a funeral drum. They formed up just inside the entrance, a living wall of honor and intimidation. The entire diner was frozen. Forks were stopped halfway to mouths. Conversations died in throats. Jessica's phone wavered in her hand. Stone's eyes, cold and sharp, swept the room. They passed over the terrified face of Mr. Henderson, dismissed the gawking customers, and slid over the pale, confused faces of Brad and his friends, as if they were insignificant pieces of furniture. Then his eyes found William Green. The hardness in the sergeant major's face melted away, replaced by a look of deep, almost worshipful respect. He walked across the diner, his path straight and true, stopping about a foot in front of William. He clicked his heels together. His right hand snapped up to his brow in a salute so sharp, so perfect, it seemed to cut the air. "Gunnery Sergeant Green," Stone's voice boomed, a parade ground command that filled every corner of the silent room. "On behalf of the Commandant and the entire United States Marine Corps, we apologize for the delay. We're here to provide your escort, sir." William, startled, instinctively began to straighten his posture. The years of training kicked in. As Stone held his salute, one of the young Marines from the formation stepped forward, stopped, and began to speak. His voice was clear and formal, reciting from a script burned into the heart of the Corps. "Gunnery Sergeant William Ironheart Green," the Marine announced, his voice ringing with pride. 22 years of active service, veteran of the Battle of Chosin Reservoir, recipient of the Silver Star for outstanding bravery and fearlessness in action against an armed enemy, recipient of 2 Bronze Stars with Valor Device for heroic achievement, recipient of 3 Purple Hearts for wounds received in action. The diner was completely still. You could have heard a napkin drop. Jessica's phone had lowered. The smug look on her face was replaced by a mask of horrified understanding. Brad's face was ash white. His jaw was slack. He looked from the saluting sergeant major to the old man he had called a costume wearer, and for the first time in his life, he seemed to understand the idea of a mistake from which there is no recovery. The young Marine continued, his voice unwavering. "Sir, your legendary actions on Hill 1282, where you held the line against overwhelming enemy forces for 72 straight hours after your officers were hurt or killed, directly resulting in the survival of your entire platoon, are still required reading for all officer candidates at Quantico. It's an honor to be in your presence." Sergeant Major Stone slowly, carefully lowered his hand. He kept his eyes locked on William. A silent communication passing between 2 generations of warrior. Then he turned his head just enough for his gaze to fall upon Brad, Kevin, and Jessica. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His quiet fury was more terrifying than any shout. "You," he said, his voice a low growl that promised unimaginable consequences. "You stand in the presence of a living legend, a man who walked through fire and bled in the snow so that children like you could have the freedom to sit here in a warm diner and throw insults you're too ignorant to understand." He took a half step toward them. "The uniform you called a costume is a testament to a life of honor, courage, and commitment that you will never know. The medals you made fun of were paid for in blood, sacrifice, and the kind of bravery you can't even understand." His icy gaze then shifted to the manager, who seemed to be trying to shrink into the floor. "And you," Stone said, his voice dripping with disgust. "You allowed this to happen in your place. You should be ashamed." William, who had watched this all unfold with a weary sadness, finally spoke. He placed a frail, trembling hand on the sergeant major's powerful forearm. "Easy, Sergeant Major," he said, his voice soft. "They're just kids. They don't know any better." He turned his faded blue eyes to the 3 students, who were now huddled together like frightened sheep. He looked at them not with anger, but with a deep, aching pity. "Freedom isn't free," he told them. "Remember that. And respect costs nothing at all." As William's hand rested on his own jacket, his fingers brushed against the cool metal of the Silver Star. The touch sparked another flicker of memory, a flash of the truth behind the honor. He saw it with perfect clarity. A frozen night in Korea, the world lit only by starlight on the snow and the distant, terrifying bloom of artillery. He saw himself, a young man, pressing a bloody bandage into the side of a wounded Marine, a boy from Ohio who couldn't have been more than 18. He was shielding the boy's body with his own as enemy machine gun fire tore through the air above them, whispering its deadly song. He could still hear his own young voice, hoarse and desperate. "Stay with me, son. Just stay with me." The medal wasn't for the fighting, it was for that moment. It was for Miller. "Let's go, Gunny," Sergeant Major Stone said gently, his tone shifting from iron to velvet as he addressed William. "We'll take you wherever you want to go." One of the young Marines stepped forward and respectfully pulled William's chair out for him. Another walked to the table and placed a crisp $100 bill on top of William's five. "For his coffee," the Marine said to the stunned manager, "and for the inconvenience." They formed a protective honor guard around the old veteran, a group of dressed blues, and escorted him toward the door. As they passed, the customers of the Oak Barrel Diner, as if moved by a single unspoken command, began to rise from their seats. A man in a business suit, a family with two small children, the couple who had turned away. They all stood. As William Green, the quiet hero, walked out of the diner, a soft, then growing wave of applause filled the room. In the weeks that followed, Jessica's video never went viral the way she had hoped. Instead, a video taken by another customer of the two black SUVs, the six perfect Marines, and the thunderous salute spread across the internet like wildfire. The university issued a formal apology, and the three students became local outcasts. Their faces became a meme for entitled ignorance. The Oak Barrel Diner changed too. A few days after the incident, a new professionally printed sign appeared in the window. "All veterans and active duty military receive a 25% discount. Thank you for your service." About a month later, William was in the canned goods aisle of the local grocery store, trying to decide between creamed corn and whole kernel. He heard a hesitant voice behind him. "Mr. Green, sir?" He turned to see Brad, the ringleader. The boy was wearing a grocery store apron and a name tag. The smug confidence was gone, replaced by a deep, hollowed-out shame. "Sir," Brad stammered, unable to meet William's eyes, "I just wanted to say sorry for that day. I was a stupid fool. What I did was... There's no excuse. I'm sorry." William Green looked at the young man for a long moment, studying the genuine regret in his face. He saw not the arrogant bully from the diner, but a boy who had been forced to learn a hard lesson. He gave a single, slow nod of his head. "I know," he said, his voice soft. Then he turned back to the shelves, picked up the can of creamed corn, and placed it in his cart. William Green's story is a powerful reminder that heroes walk among us every day, often in the quietest, most unassuming forms. If you were moved by this story of bravery and justice, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe to our channel Stories for more.